Frank said, "Look at how a single candle can both defy and define darkness." And Rumi, the 13th century Sufi mystic and poet, said, "A candle never loses any of its light while lighting another candle." Jesus is in the temple and the people have gathered around him. And our verse today from John 8 verse 12 reads as follows. "Then Jesus spoke to them again, saying, 'I am the light of the world. He who follows me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life.'" Although load shedding has been turning our lights off for some time now, the good news is that Jesus' light will never be dimmed or turned off. "I am the light of the world" is one of the 7 I am sayings of Jesus that you will find in John's Gospel. Remember, he says, "I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the door for the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And I am the true vine." When Jesus said, "I am," he was making a parallel between his words and the words of God speaking to Moses from the burning bush in Exodus chapter 3. And this was Jesus' way of asserting his divinity, that in fact he is God. Jesus said, "I am the light of the world." So let's have a quick look at some interesting facts about light. Light is made up of energy. It travels in a straight line. Objects in its path cause it to bend or refract. And there are different types of light, and each one has its own wavelength. Some light is visible to the human eye, but most light along the light spectrum is invisible to the human eye. You've got gamma rays and X-rays, infrared rays, microwaves, and radar. The speed of light is 299,337,984 kilometers per second. And traveling at that speed, you could go around the Earth 7.5 times in 1 second. Light from the sun takes just over 8 minutes to reach us. And Einstein said that if you could travel at the speed of light, time ceases to be. Now, the Bible tells us that God is spirit, and it also tells us that God is light. In 1 John chapter 1 verse 5, it says that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. So going back to what Einstein said, if we could travel at the speed of light, time ceases to be, it would explain why God is not limited by space and time, because he's outside of space and time. God is light. He is not restricted by space and time, and therefore has no beginning and has no end. God dwells in unapproachable light, whom no man has seen or can see. So God is part of that invisible light spectrum. It may sound mystical and confusing, but hear this. God decided to make his light visible. So light was wrapped in flesh, and Jesus Christ became the visible image of God. And he steps into our world. And here in his ministry, Jesus draws this contrast between light and darkness. And he's saying in effect that he's coming to bring light into a morally dark world, to save it. So just think about it. Light and darkness is a common contrast that describes good versus evil and right versus wrong, or what is overt and what is covert. Things that are overt come out into the light. They are visible, they are vulnerable, transparent and pure. Birds come out at the first sight of dawn dawn to greet the day. They start to chirp and tweet and sing. Flowers open up in the morning sun. And the beautiful analogy of the sunflower. The sunflower follows the sun. Covert, on the other hand, is secretive. Things done under the cover of darkness. Doesn't want to be detected, it's hidden. Covert animals, the nocturnal creatures, they only come out at night. And most crime is committed under the cover of darkness. And load shedding doesn't help. But let's look at the scene here in John chapter 8. We know from chapter 7 that it's the Feast of Tabernacles, or Sukkot. The word Sukkot means booths. Now, throughout the holiday, Jews observe this time by building and dwelling in temporary shelters, just like the Israelites did while wandering in the desert for those 40 years. And this joyous celebration is a reminder for the people to always remember God's deliverance, His protection and provision, and His faithfulness. How He led the people by a cloud by day to protect them from the heat of the sun, and a pillar of fire at night. And this was God's manifest presence amongst the Israelites. Jewish tradition tells us that on the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, this was a great ceremony called the illumination of the temple, which involved the ritual lighting of 4 golden oil-fed lamps in the court of the women. These lamps were huge menorahs or candelabra, about 23 meters high, and they were lit in the temple at night. And it said that their light shone their brilliance, illuminating the entire city all night. So Jesus uses this feast in this ceremonial moment to communicate who He is, and the people would have understood, because Jesus is saying, just as God illuminated your way from slavery in Egypt to the promised land, so it is I who will illuminate your way from the slavery of sin to the promise of salvation. Jesus has come into the world to illuminate a dark world, to illuminate our dark hearts, to our dark minds, and to bring us to a place of salvation. It's about surrendering our lives to Jesus and following Him, following His ways. For we have His light. His light is within us, and we will not walk in darkness. But look what Jesus does in bringing us to a place of salvation, to bring us to this place of relationship with Him. He turns the tables and He says in Matthew 5, verses 14 and 16, you and me are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Jesus is the light of the world. But He says now that we've come into the light, and He wants us to be the light of the world. In other words, Jesus is repurposing our lives and calls us to be a reflection of Him in this world, to represent Him in this dark world. He wants us to shine His light in the world. You know, we are like the moon, and Jesus is like the sun, the S-U-N. The moon is not a light source by itself, but it reflects the light of the sun. And this is what Jesus calls us to. We are called, as believers, to reflect the light of the Son, Jesus, so that others will see Him through us. You know, we all are like candles. The light within us, God's light given to us through Jesus, the light of the world, can defy and define darkness. And our light, like these candles, can never lose its radiance by lighting up another person's life. This light inside of us must be nurtured, be cared for, and it needs to shine brightly. And take care of that light within you. Your light needs you to love it. Give it the music it wants. Give it the dance it needs. Give it the sun that its soul admires. Give it the stars at night. Your light, that thing about you that shines so brightly that others want to see, needs to be nurtured and loved and cared for. Because we're only given this time really to take care of the light of Jesus within us. So shine, because when you do, you give others permission to shine too. Too often we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear and an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn a life around, to light up someone's life. So don't hide your light somewhere, under a bushel or in a corner. The world needs you. The world needs you to shine.